I am very boring. Okay, stop right there. That is the sentence we are talking about today. Because if you've ever said that, trying to meme, I'm exhausted and just so drained by this meeting, you might have just committed a pretty major social and linguistic slip-up.
Oh, it's the kind of mistake that just instantly changes the air in the room.
Right.
You intended to describe this temporary internal feeling, but what you actually did was redefine your own character. It's a really spectacular linguistic failure.
A spectacular failure.
And one of the analyses we looked at put it perfectly. Making that mistake is like saying your toaster is sad.
That's it. That analogy makes the whole problem click instantly.
It really does.
You're assigning the emotional impact, the cause of the dullness, to yourself instead of describing yourself as, the recipient of the effect. And that single tiny suffix difference, just switching from N to ed, has the power to turn you from a tired person into a dull person.
Exactly. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're getting to the core linguistic rule behind this very common confusion between AAT-ing adjectives.
Using boring versus bored as our main example.
Our main and most powerful example. The mission today is pretty simple. We want to give you the knowledge to make sure you never accidentally, call yourself the source of tedium ever again.
By showing how language actually identifies the flow of energy cause versus effect.
Precisely.
So let's start with the stakes, because they're immediately and socially very high.
Yeah.
So you, the listener, you've had a really long day, you're feeling the weight of it, maybe you're jet lagged, or you just finished some tedious project.
That's the intention, right? Fatigue, mental exhaustion.
Yeah.
That feeling of being worn out by something else.
All you want to say is, I'm so bored. You're the victim here. You're the passive victim of all the dullness around you.
But the unintended meaning, the thing a native speaker hears,
is a permanent characteristic.
Yes. If you say, I am boring, you are stating that your personality, your conversation, your very presence is just uninteresting. You're the generator of the dullness.
And this is where the humor comes in. But it's humor that really underscores how serious this little slip-up is.
We're talking about the social contract, really.
You're actively labeling yourself as the one producing a negative experience for everybody else.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm the problem.
Exactly. We were looking at some examples that contrast these intentions, and they're almost brutal in their simplicity. Think about the right way to use it descriptively. The movie was boring.
Right, the movie's the source. It's an object, it's generating the feeling, and it's doing a bad job of entertaining you.
Okay, or the correct internal state. I am bored.
You're reacting to the movie. Both of those are perfectly fine. They convey clear information.
But then you have the really awkward misstep. I am boring.
Now, the conclusion from our analysis was just perfect. It said, sorry, your friends are running. And that image of people just backing away from the conversation tells you everything. You basically define yourself as a kind of social hazard.
What's so fascinating is that the emotion itself, boredom, is universal. We all feel it.
Of course.
But describing it correctly needs you to understand your relationship to it. Are you the actor, or are you the one being acted upon?
The one on the receiving end.
Okay, so let's finally do the deep dive into the grammar here, because understanding the mechanism is really the only way to make this rule stick.
Let's do it.
Why is it that boring describes the movie, but in this context, it's the wrong word for the tired person?
So we need to look at how English creates adjectives from verbs. This is a huge category of words. When you add that ing suffix to a verb, like to bore, it creates an adjective that defines the source of the action.
The source or the cause?
The cause, exactly. So the movie is actively doing the boring. It's the engine that's generating the dullness.
It's the cause.
It is the cause. The ing form turns the subject into the catalyst, the originator of the effect. So if a person is boring, they are that catalyst. They are the one making other people feel bored, the active producer.
Okay, so let me try to apply this to another common one, confusing versus confused.
Big one.
If I say, the manual is confusing, I'm saying the manual is the active source of my confusion. It's generating that difficulty.
You've got it. The manual is causing the confusion. So now let's flip it. Let's look at the A form board.
Okay.
That suffix transforms the verb into an adjective that describes the state you're in, or you, as the recipient of the feeling.
So if I say I am bore, it means the verb to bore has acted on me.
Yes.
And I'm just experiencing the result. I'm the passive recipient of that feeling of dullness. It's an inward flow.
It is entirely about directionality. That is the key insight here.
Directionality. I like that.
The ing form pushes the feeling outward from the subject onto others. The ag form pulls the feeling inward toward the subject, showing they're the one on the receiving end of the action.
That makes the connection back to the listener's internal state so much clearer. You aren't generating fatigue, you're experiencing it.
It was caused by that 4-hour meeting.
Right, you're the object that's being affected.
Let's test this with maybe a slightly more emotionally charged pair. What about frustrating versus frustrated?
Okay, if I say my internet connection is frustrating, the connection is the active source. It's generating my frustration, pushing that feeling out.
Right.
But if I say I am frustrated, then I am the recipient of that negative feeling from the bad connection.
Exactly. And now think about the social consequence of messing that one up.
Oh, wow.
Imagine telling your boss, I am frustrated.
You'd essentially be claiming responsibility for all the frustration in the department, which is probably not what you meant to do.
Very unlikely.
You know, I think I see now why this is so tricky, especially for learners. In conversation, we sort of treat these active and passive states like they're just emotional synonyms.
But they're not. Grammatically, they're opposites in terms of direction. They're directional pointers, not synonyms at all.
Wow.
And that's why recognizing the pattern is so powerful. Think about disappointing versus disappointed.
A bad movie is disappointing,
The cause.
and the person who watched it is disappointed.
The recipient.
The rule holds true every single time for these kinds of adjectives, the ones derived from verbs that describe internal states.
It's actually a pretty beautiful system when you break it down.
It really is.
So if you are the object experiencing the feeling, the one taking the emotional hit, you have to use ed.
And if you're the subject, the thing generating the feeling for others, you use ed.
That's the rule, crystallize.
It is. And this brings us to the broader context of language learning. You are so not alone if you've tripped over this. Even native speakers do it sometimes because the underlying rule isn't something we're often taught directly.
Right, it's just something native speakers sort of absorb. It's intuitive.
It is. But for someone learning English, especially if their own language doesn't use suffixes this way, it's just a constant minefield. You're forced to memorize hundreds of individual pairs.
Oh, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
Or maybe disappointing, if you see what I did there.
Hey.
But when you realize this is a category of error, not just a bunch of random words to memorize, your knowledge transfer just, it accelerates.
It gives you immediate predictive power.
That's it. You gain control over a huge class of adjectives the moment you internalize. ing out, ed in.
So the goal here is illumination, right? Not shame.
Absolutely. The material we looked at really reinforces that idea. The whole point is the pursuit of knowledge. You just turned a common mistake into a fundamental rule of grammar.
So next time you feel that unique internal weight of mental exhaustion, after that long day or that audit you thought would never, ever end, you now have the tool. You can describe your internal state perfectly to say, you know, definitively, I'm so bored.
Choose wisely. Because that tiny difference between I am boring and I am bored is literally the difference between describing a temporary emotional state and defining a permanent piece of your character.
That is a profound difference. And just recognizing how much meaning gets packed into such a tiny linguistic particle, that's the real deep dive.
And as one analysis put it, you have to remember that mistakes are just new words. They're opportunities. Opportunities to refine how you understand the language.
So here's the final provocative thought for you to chew on, sort of building on this idea of accidentally defining yourself.
Okay.
If the difference between ed-enging is the difference between a temporary feeling and a permanent trait, what other small linguistic choices are we making every single day? In our emails, in our texts, in just our casual conversations, choices that are unknowingly shifting how the world sees us?
That's a great question. Keep analyzing those patterns.
Yeah.
Keep questioning those small word choices, because the real power of communication, it so often rests in those tiny little pieces of language we tend to overlook.
And most importantly, keep being you.